Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi everyone, welcome to Ditch the Struggle. Today is a conversation with Jen Cook, and she is an incredible graphic designer and just a lovely human being. I love talking with her so much. She is going to talk about her different paths, her different career choices, all the things that she's done, the side hustles, the day jobs. We really dive into having multiple passions, doing different things and trying different things and trusting your intuition. So let me read her little bio. Jen is an award-winning creative director with experience in creative strategy, brand development, integrated marketing, and creative leadership. Jen has spent over a decade building cohesive, engaging brand experiences for organizations that have a positive impact on the world. She's currently the creative director for Science World, an iconic Vancouver science center. She's also the co-founder of Housework, a branding agency launched in 2021, and Otto Studio, I love Otto, a home decor brand launched in 2022. Whatever the creative endeavor, she believes in doing good work with good people. So let's dive into this great conversation. Welcome, everyone. I am thrilled to have Jen Cook here for an interesting conversation because Jen does a million things. And I know we connected on that level because she's a creative, she's a manager, she designs, she does a whole bunch of different things. So welcome, Jen.
Hi, I'm so happy to be chatting with you today.
Yeah. So why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you came to be a designer?
Yeah. So I definitely started out not knowing what design was or wanting to be a designer. I've always been a person that's been, pretty open and flexible with what I'm doing at any given moment. So I was a kid that loved drawing and art growing up. And then when it came time to choose a career, I was like, well, I like art. I don't think art is a career for me. I know that this is very hard. So I dabbled in a few things, but I ended up going to art school at Emily Carr in Vancouver. And just going into the design program there and graduating in about 2011. And then from there, I've had a pretty how can I say, diverse work experience. So
Yes.
I was freelancing when I was in university, just taking odd jobs here and there. But my first design job internship was at John Fluvog Shoes, and I was designing shoes, which was kind of wild.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I didn't actually know that because my friend used to work in the Queen Street Toronto store for years and years and years. She was our Fluvog friend. And
Oh, really?
so very familiar with the brand because anyone who was in Toronto just knew their shoes.
Yeah, I mean, they're iconic, right? It was such a crash course in brand, which I didn't really realize at the time.
Yeah.
So I was drawing the shoes, I was helping with the production.
Oh my gosh.
So, it really taught me a lot of skills for sure. The Illustrator pen tool was my friend. That was most of my days spent clicking around. But yeah, looking back, it was definitely how to live into a brand and understand a brand from all of its touch points. So did that for a while. And then I worked in an architecture and urban planning firm, which is a very different vibe than John Fluvog Shoes. So that was also a bit of a crash course in just production. It was a bit of a gauntlet, I guess. I remember I used to have to, my job was designing RFP proposals for big, huge projects.
It's such a thing.
It's so intense. So you're dealing with architects who are very particular about everything, and everything is on a very set time schedule. So if you don't get that proposal in by 2 p.m. on Tuesday the 5th, that's it. It's null and void. So I used to have to print them out and take them sometimes, run across town and take them to whatever office. So yeah, definitely it was a lot. Again, I appreciate it, but I did that for about a year and a bit, and I was like, I'm done with this. And then from there, I worked. I was freelancing on the side this whole time. So friends and people that I knew that wanted me to work on various things. Went to a small agency after the architecture firm, and then from there, that agency got absorbed into its sister company, which was a tech company that did charitable donations. It was a platform for for fundraising, basically. So did that for a few years. And then from there, I moved to my position that I'm at now, which is at Science World, which is a big iconic tourist destination in Vancouver and science museum. So it's a nonprofit, very mission driven, and I lead the design team there.
So you've done like fashion and lifestyle with the shoes. You've done like architecture, you've done tech, you've done like nonprofit, you have done the gamut. And I also really I admired that. I also could resonate with that because the multitude of industries and changing industries. What do you think allowed you to do that? Or how did you have the courage to kind of just be like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this.
Yeah, I think it's part courage, part sort of just being sick of wherever I'm at. I'm like, okay, it's time
Yes.
to go. There's always that element. You're like, all right,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it's time to make my exit. But I think the thing that's allowed me to do that is not being too attached to a specific idea of what my career should look like.
Right.
As I mentioned, like I've never sort of been the type of person to have this like set vision of, exactly what I think I should be doing. Sometimes that can, lead to some indecision, but the
Yes.
benefit to that is to be able to go with the flow and sort of be able to go with my gut a little bit. And so I've been very lucky to do that in my career.
Now, did you feel like were people around you curious about how you were changing jobs and companies? Like, did they have thoughts on that? Did people try and talk you out of that? Or did they just be like, Jen's doing Jen?
Yeah, I'd say overall, mostly people are just like, all right, but
Yeah.
interesting, cool.
Yeah.
But definitely, especially earlier on in my career, there was a lot more voices, especially when you're like in school, and around more people that do have that very
Mhm.
specific idea of,
Yes.
oh, I'm only going to work in an agency. I remember at one point early on, I think it was just after I graduated, I went to New York to visit a couple friends and did some studio visits, and I was like, yeah, it'd be cool to get an
Mhm.
internship in New York. And then pretty quickly I was like, oh, I don't think I actually want to live here. And I don't think that I would have a good time after learning a bit more. So I was thinking about that this morning. I was so like reflecting on, man, what if I had forced myself to do that? I would have been
Yeah.
miserable. So yeah, I think the more I have advanced, the less and less I've heard those opinions, and definitely be cared about them.
So when you kind of reflected on that New York piece, was there a part of you that thought, maybe I should have tried that? Or did you just think, I'm so glad I didn't do that? Like, I definitely would have been miserable. Or was there a part of you that wavered still?
Yeah, no regrets.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely like I trust my gut, and I remember being there and yeah, just as I was doing some of the studio tours and chatting with people about their workload and what their life was like, and
Yeah.
it's like, I think it was like, wow, okay, if this is what it means to, have this sort of glamorous life in New York, like is that actually what I want, or do I
Mhm.
think I want that because that's the thing that everyone
Yes.
wants? Yeah.
Yes. And I love that you asked that and reflected on that because it is so easy, especially when you're younger, like when you're building your career in your 20s, to get sucked into the vision of what you think you should be doing, what that design
Mhm.
career should be. You want the sexy agency. Like agency life for me is hell. Like it is, it's awful. I do not enjoy it at all. It's too demanding. There's an abrasive nature to it.
Yeah.
So you took the time to reflect, and it sounds like that's really helped in your career.
Yeah, I would say that that reflection, I definitely, like I said, I trust my gut and what it's telling me in any given moment. The downside is that I probably, could plan a little bit more and be a little bit more intentional. But at the very least, I just know like if something doesn't feel right for me, if there's an opportunity that isn't resonating, even if it's the thing on paper that should be resonating, I have no problem with ditching it and walking away and be like, nope, something else.
Okay, so have you always trusted your gut? Like, is that one of your core check-ins?
Yeah. Yeah, I would
Okay.
say that that's a big factor in how I have lived my life generally.
Has there been any moments in your career where you didn't listen to your gut and you went full tilt and you're like, I'm going to try this, I don't care, and had an interesting result?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that when I haven't trusted my gut, oh, I feel like there's probably like a great example in here. I would say that at times when I haven't trusted my gut have been mostly if I'm trying to hang on to something out of convenience, or I'm convinced that things will change, like working in a toxic job where it's like,
Mhm.
well, maybe if we just get through this phase, or once we,
Yes.
this X, Y, or Z project happens, even though my gut's kind of saying, oh, I think the problems are deeper than this. Those have been the times when it's, I've sort of regretted not just going with my
Yes.
gut.
Yes. And I think designers, especially, we're very creative thinkers. So we can creatively think of ways that things will get better. And if this
Yep.
person just leaves, or once that person goes on mat leave, or once this project's done, it's going to magically just kind of come together. And it's not to say that sometimes things don't shift. And I've been places where definitely things shift, but there's just that feeling sometimes that, like I've run my course here.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it's, the sunk cost fallacy is really strong, right? Like
Yeah.
we all are convinced and have our reasons for, and there's, multitude of reasons why we might stay doing something or take that job, even though,
Yeah.
we have feelings about it. But I would say, yeah, usually my gut is right. And usually if something doesn't go well, I'm like, well, I called that one.
Yeah. And then you have more evidence that your gut is giving you correct information, or that you can trust your
Yeah.
gut. And then it makes decision making easier and easier as you're going through your career. That's amazing. I love that. So you're doing a full-time job, you have a team, you're a manager. And I know you love working with good people, as you say, like, because you also are a good person and just want the best in everybody. Um, but you are an entrepreneur running a company. And the cool thing about this, and why I really wanted you to come on this show, is because you're running it with other people. You have a collaboration with Otto, and I want to hear all about Otto, and it's with two others. So you have decided to do entrepreneurship as a team, which is so cool.
Hmm.
So tell us all about Otto.
Yeah. So Otto is my little side business, side baby that's probably getting to be an adolescent at this point. But
Mhm.
it is a wallpaper company, so we're a home decor company. So what we do is I do some of the designs for it. We also collaborate with artists and influencers kind of around the world at this point. And it was a little pandemic idea that took off, and we kind of started out with this thought of, is there anything here? Does this idea have legs? And it turns out it does. So we've been having a blast running it, and it's been so exciting to see it grow. For both of my business partners and I, we're all doing it on the side. Both of my business partners also have very young kids,
Wow.
which I'm so impressed by. Um, and it's just been such a huge, like a big learning curve. And entrepreneurship has been something that's been part of my life since I
Mhm.
was a kid,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny to look back about being, 7 years old and setting up my little, you know, shoe shine table to for my parents, like
Oh, that's adorable.
drawing my little sign. So yeah, entrepreneurship just feels natural to me. And it's been so fun to have this project with a team.
Yes. So it's not doing it on your own, because I don't know. My default setting was always like, if I'm going to do entrepreneurship, it's just going to be me hustling against the world. Like that was, I don't know, the hyper independence in me just thought that way. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could collaborate with someone. Like if I wanted, I could do this podcast with someone else, or anything. And you immediately kind of jumped into that concept. And I would love to hear, because I know a little bit of the story, but it's so interesting how the wallpaper idea kind of came to be, because you had access to a printing, is it like a printing press for it? And that helped the
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of how it came about. So my main business partner, Hannah, we used to work together at the tech company that I mentioned. And Devin, who was our third partner, he is actually the husband of another friend that we used to work with. So we all have a bit of a history and know each other. So Devin, he owns a printing company. So he kind of had the initial idea of, hey, I have this equipment, I have this team, I have this space, I want to maximize it. So he thought, hey, what about like a wallpaper company, like something direct to consumer? He floated the idea past Hannah, and Hannah was like, I'll do it if Jen does it with me. And so we had some conversations around it. Um, and we had actually the whole figuring out what the business would be took quite a while, because we had so many conversations about everything from what our expectations were, what our sort of hard lines were, what our boundaries were. Hannah and I had lots of conversations about prioritizing our friendship as well, like knowing how business partnerships can sometimes get contentious. So
Yeah.
we were really thoughtful and careful about how we set up the business and how we work together. And then once we got through that, we launched it, and yeah.
Yeah, it's taken off. Like it's not a little baby anymore. The work is so beautiful, and your social media
Oh,
is amazing. Like the videos, and I'll obviously put all the links in the show notes so people can check it out, and the Instagram. And you are doing, other than the ones that you do with collaborators or influencer, you do all the graphic design for the wallpaper, right?
Yes. Yeah. All of the
Wild.
product design. Yeah. And there's also a lot of like production support for artists. If artists have different levels of familiarity, some of them aren't even really working digitally very much. So
Oh my
um,
gosh.
production work, design work for the core collection, and then all of the like yes, like I said, social media design, marketing, all of it is on my plate.
So how do you deal with, I don't want to say the balance of it all because I feel like I don't know any creative that really has balance, but I know it's aspirational to have some kind of like things making sense and feeling balanced. How do you do it all? That's always the $1 million question.
I would say that like what I've learned in freelancing for years before this and sort of I've always had some sort of entrepreneurial thing that I'm doing. I'm making and selling jewelry, or I had like an online vintage clothing shop for a little while. So in all of those little experiments, the big lesson and takeaway that I took away from that was be ruthless in what you're spending your time on.
Mm.
So this time around for this project, the question, and just kind of in my day to day as well at my job, the question that I ask myself all the time is what I'm working on in this moment the most important thing I can be working on? And the number of times I catch myself not working on the important thing, but getting distracted by the email or whatever it is. So constantly getting in the habit of asking myself that question, that really puts things into sharp focus. So um, that helps prioritize things. Being able to let go of the, perfectionism is a huge one as well,
Uh,
because I can't do everything.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's a huge one. Like there's no way that I can do everything exactly perfectly. So by removing that expectation on myself, that's a huge part of it. Again, what's the most important thing right now that I can work on? Just do that. That's the best that I can, and then move on.
You know what? That's such a simple way to prioritize the checking in. It's the awareness piece that you do have that awareness about you that you're checking in, seeing what's making sense. And how often do we get caught up doing something and we're like, what the heck? 5 minutes
Oh
later, like,
yeah.
what am I doing? Why am I
Oh yeah.
spending time on this? And we are distracting ourselves sometimes. And then sometimes we think it's important, but you're clearly being, I love the way you use the word ruthless. Like you're being ruthless about how you spend your time and what the hierarchy is.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not working until midnight every night on Otto. Every day I finish my day job and I sit down and I ask myself that question, what is the important thing to work on right now? And I spend a couple hours doing that, and then I have time to rest and relax.
Wow.
So have done that to myself previously, where I've worked so much that I've had so much burnout, no downtime whatsoever, no social life. And that's part of my commitment to myself, is that I'm not going to do that again. So if that means that I'm going to do that task another day, or it's just going to be the MVP version for now and I can improve on it later, that's what I'm going to do.
Wow. And then have you found that it's gotten easier to be in that mindset as you've gone through your career?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I think that once you kind of get like, it's difficult at first. It's a little bit of like, there's some guilt and
Yep.
there's a lot of, I mean,
Yes.
perfectionism for designers
Yep.
is like, it's huge. It's embedded into us. It's
Mhm.
drilled into us. Everything has to be perfect, every single detail. And I think the thing that I've learned is like, maybe not every detail is as important. And if you're sacrificing the bigger picture for those details, then it's not going to work.
No. And you know what? I feel like we need to do a survey. I'm like, survey all graphic designers. Like, does 100% of them like associate with being a perfectionist? I'm going to guess it's pretty like
Oh
99.
yeah.
It's going to be something
Yeah,
like that because
totally. And
it
I
just attracts it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of benefits to it. And I really appreciate people who like, they love the details and they're really great at that. It's one thing that I coach team members on at my work is um, if you are so obsessed with the details that you're actually tanking the bigger picture. Like if
Mhm.
the bigger picture is that this needs to get out the door, you maybe need to maintain relationships internally or externally. If you're sacrificing that because you're digging in your heels about those details, then that's not the way that I want to work or I want my team to work.
That's brilliant. And have you found that letting go of the perfectionism a little bit has allowed you to enjoy your work more?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because it sort of gives you space to play and experiment a little bit more. You're less concerned about how people are perceiving it. So that has also been a big shift in the last several years. Ironically, the more responsibility I get, the more I kind of I think it's also a little bit seeing that bigger picture and going, okay, what actually matters here? Like
Yeah.
what is the end result that we're going for, and what are the things that will impact that the most?
Yes, because we can't do it all. And I would say everyone should do a little bit of entrepreneurship to learn to let go of that perfectionism through
Oh
it.
yeah.
So like you come to a point where you realize I cannot make everything perfect. It's not even going to be sometimes 80% of what I want, but it's going to go out
Yeah.
the door. And
Yes.
this is just what's going to happen. And you're going to feel better about yourself that you got it out the door, you got it done, than if you had not completed it at all because you were waiting for it to be perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like there's projects that have stalled. I've started and stalled so long because I was committed to it being the most perfect thing ever, and it just never got done. So
No,
yeah,
no. And then you feel crappy. And I think like I'm always thinking about the end result, like how I'm going to feel when I get something done. And it's not going to be weighted on whether it's perfect or not. It really is like
Mhm.
done is better than perfect
Yeah,
because I've had to also let go of some of that perfectionism and worrying about how it's going to be perceived and how it's going to be judged. And you just get that creates that freeze response where you're just not going to
totally.
get anything out the door.
Yeah, and kind of to your previous question about like how it's changed. I mean, I would also say that I prioritize fun and joy, like or something that I'm trying to do more in my work.
Yes.
That's a big aspect of like the brand of Otto and the
And it is
whole
so fun
genesis
and
of
it
it.
is so joyful. Like it's just happy to look at it. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think that's also what I love about Otto and what we've been able to build in that brand is like life is short. Just, like let loose a little. Like it doesn't need to be, not everything is so deep. You can just
No.
experiment and play. And I try to bring that into my everyday work in whatever I'm doing is that most things, I take the work seriously, but never myself, and I feel like to me, how you get the work done matters as much as the end result. So if
Yeah.
you are you know, thinking of toxic workplaces, right? Like if everyone's miserable, it doesn't really matter to me in the end if it's award-winning work. If everyone is miserable doing it,
What's
um, why? What? Yeah, why are we here?
yeah, what's the point? It can be just so frustrating and draining. So what I'm hearing there is that fun, joy are part of your core values and something that is very important to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so basing your business kind of on those values has helped shape it into the kind of company you want it to be.
Yeah, I feel very privileged and grateful to be able to do that and say, if I'm going to run a company, how do I want to do it and be able to do that? And also find partners who are willing to do that with me.
Yeah, you guys all seem to be on the same page and you were all friends, you've stayed friends. This is
Yeah.
also really interesting to me because I think people have fear about that and that makes sense. But that you're also able to do it with the full-time work and, not having to go all in necessarily right now on Otto and make it like your whole livelihood, your whole world. You
Hmm.
still are able to have the stability of a job. And listen, we're living in Canada.
Yeah.
Like a lot of us are feeling the pressures of Canadian living. And
Oh
you
yeah.
have that safety net, which is not a bad thing. There are so many entrepreneurs, and I just really want to touch on this, who feel like they're not real entrepreneurs unless they go all in.
Hmm. Yep.
So can you just
Oh
speak to
yeah.
that for a second?
Yeah. Oh man, I have so many feelings about that. Um, I I feel like what has been so incredible about not going that route, like quitting your day job immediately to go chase your dream. I've seen so many friends in various practices really have a miserable time doing that because they haven't really thought through. And this was like a very popular way of thinking kind of in the early 2010s, especially like
Oh,
chase your
yes.
dream and follow your passion. And, you'll never
Yes.
work a day in your life. Like that's not the reality. So seeing very talented people not think it all the way through and not hedge their bets enough
Mhm.
and yeah, end up sort of being a little bit trapped by what they've built. So with Otto, what's been really incredible is that none of us are relying on it for our income. So it gives us the freedom to make the decisions as we see fit, and that's definitely played out in a lot of ways. Like we're not taking collaborations out of desperation. Like we can be picky and choosy about
Oh,
who and when
concerning.
we work. Yeah. Um, we've been able to sort of take our time and test and build and learn and experiment. And I think that, the sort of old school thinking around, you got to have your, back in a corner and then, you can pull off incredible things.
Oh
Like, but
gosh,
that's a
yes.
position of desperation. Like, why
Mhm.
would you put yourself in
Yes.
that intentionally?
Oh my gosh, I
You know,
love
it,
that you're saying this.
yeah, like, entrepreneurship is difficult enough and there's going to be no end to things that, situations that you'll have to navigate
Mhm.
already. Why would you make it
Mhm.
harder on yourself to prove something? I don't know. I don't understand.
Yes, there's that mentality, and I love it. We're going to talk about the 2010s because that all or nothing, But that mentality that unless your back is up against a wall, you're not going to succeed. You need to get rid of plan B. You just have to have plan B,
Hmm.
go all in. I feel like that's a lot of pressure. And I really feel that works for some people if they are very high risk tolerant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is one thing to consider that people don't think about is you have to be willing to lose your shirt potentially or be in a lot of debt temporarily or like live a very stressful life. And you don't have to do entrepreneurship that way.
No, no, it's way more fun if you can, hedge your bets, like I said. And I do think that ability to just experiment as well. And like, especially if you're learning like entrepreneurship, you're learning end to end everything, right? Like I'm learning about email marketing strategies and digital ads and, as well as the design and brand work of it, production, like all of it, account management. So you're learning so much. Give yourself the time to actually like pursue those things. That's also what I love about entrepreneurship is being able to
Mhm.
learn so much about so many different things. So yeah, again, if you are panicked,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a place where you can learn, where you can really grow. You're just going to be making rash decisions.
Yeah. It's like I feel like you're creating in a panic room. Like you're just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
trapped in
Yeah,
this panic room trying to like make it like, oh my God, I need to make $3,000 this month or whatever it is in order to pay my rent. And that's it is that desperate energy and that franticness can spill into your business and um
hmm
mean that you make decisions that aren't so great sometimes.
yeah. Like if you had an extra, beat to think about something, if you had a little more time, if you had a little less pressure, like you might take a totally different path, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that's incredible the way that you're doing that. You're building it very consciously, deliberately. You're bringing in the joy, bringing in the fun. You're doing it the way you want to do it with people that you want to work with.
yeah, yeah. And
And
I
you
think
go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was going to say the key thing is also like working with people. It's another thing that a lot of designers do is the solo entrepreneurship thing, which is, I think I've done it and it's exciting and satisfying, but work with people that have skills that are opposite of yours. I can't recommend that enough. Like
Okay.
if you like, Hannah and I are total opposites in terms of, how we approach things. She's high risk. I'm like low risk tolerance. She's like, amazing at accounts management and operations. I do not like those things. Those are not my skills. And I admire her skills so much, and the skills that I don't have, and vice versa. So teaming up with people that have those complementary skills that will do the things. Do you like accounting? No, find an accountant friend. Like
Yes.
find people who are into the things that and good at the things that you don't like doing, and team up. It's so much easier that way.
It's so much easier. And it seems really obvious when we talk about it here, but we don't do it. Like we naturally, and I say we because I just feel like so many humans do this. We just naturally think we have to do it the hard way. We have to struggle. That's why we're talking about this. And we have to prove to ourselves that we can do everything and anything. Like I need to prove that I can do the accounting and I can rock the Excel spreadsheets. And I was like, do you really need to do that? Do you really need to do
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Why?
If
Like
you want to, great. Yeah.
yeah, but it's not. It's sort of this like martyrdom Olympics a little bit where like I have to do everything and be perfect at it. Says who? Who's telling you
Yeah.
that? No, that's ridiculous. Yeah, collaboration is key. Collaboration
Yeah.
is yeah. There's one through line of like how I try to approach all of my work. It's collaboration lifts everyone up. Like it truly is the secret sauce. Is finding
Yeah.
finding the right people and leaning into each other's strengths.
Yes. Because I feel like collaboration dovetails to community, even if you're creating your own little auto community
Mm.
and you guys are setting the stage for how you kind of want to build probably your customer base and the vibe that you're attracting and the world that you're building online and with your product, I think stems from, how it's being created.
Yeah, I'd say that people are picking up on that. We've been floored at
Mm,
community building is a little bit of a buzzword, but
yeah.
people actually being so generous with their time and people are sending in their photos of their installs and like we have like a real dialogue with a lot of the people that not just like creators and influencers that we work with, but customers. And that is so energizing. That's one of the energizing things about entrepreneurship.
Yes. So, what is one of the things that you find yourself kind of still struggling with in your career? And it can be your job or entrepreneurship or the balance. Like, is there anything that you're like, I'm still kind of struggling with this?
I would say, yeah, I would say one of the biggest struggles is at this point, it really seeing where to go next. I think that there is a pressure of getting older and aging. 10
Mhm.
years ago, 15 years ago, you got your whole life ahead of you, and everything is blue sky. But I am starting to feel a little bit of that pressure of, okay, I'm 40 now. I know that there is looming ageism. There's, the sort of,
Yeah.
it's kind of ironic that the further you get in your career, doors open, but doors also close.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
there can be a little bit of lack of flexibility. So I think that's something that I'm struggling with a little bit right now, where it's like, okay, what's the next step, and what makes sense, and what do I sort of want? As I was saying earlier, that little bit of intentionality. Winging it into your 40s and
Yeah,
50s is a little bit of a different thing than in your 20s,
it
to an
is.
extent. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I love that you did bring up ageism because things do change and you'd have to have your head in the sand to not kind of see it or feel it or experience it at some point once you hit a certain age. I definitely want to dive into that in some other shows because it's there and it can be a fear. And we
Hmm.
need to look at the fears that we're feeling as we're going through our career and really discern, okay, is this a valid fear? And if it is, how do I move through it? How can I kind of navigate this and still build your career creatively? Kind of still wing it a little bit, like not having to plan everything, but being thoughtful about it, I think does resonate with a lot of people, like being thoughtful with how they're building their career.
Yeah, I think that thoughtfulness is important, as well as just flexibility. I mean, so much is changing right now in just the workspace generally, in design. Like, it does feel, obviously no one ever knows the future, but it does feel like I'm not sure what our careers will be like in 10 years. It feels like
Yeah.
we're on like a precipice here.
I'm feeling that too, and I can just sense it. And for all the obvious reasons, I think a lot of designers are seeing that and curious about what's happening and a little bit fearful as well. So I think there's something in the air for sure that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's approaching it with a little bit of positivity with
Yes,
changes. There could be some opportunity. It could be good in many ways. So try
there's
to keep that
always
in mind.
opportunity. There's always opportunity during even, economic collapses, whatever's happening, going on, or could happen. There is always opportunities. And here's the thing: I think the creative thinkers are the ones that get through that the best.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
Yes. So you did a lot of freelancing, I know, at the beginning of your career, or like you did it right away. Like you said, when you were in school, you started freelancing. So one of my top pieces of advice for people building their graphic design career is actually to do some freelancing, whether they
Hmm.
don't become an entrepreneur or not. They just go into a job, as I call them. I think learning how to do a freelance project, to, do a quote and bill people and collect money
Yes.
for it, and that whole
Yes.
process is hugely important. So you obviously learned a lot from that freelance experience. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that, taking on freelance jobs means that you learn that end-to-end client management. So it's almost like a little bit of like a mini crash course in being a creative director. You're
Mhm.
pitching the idea, you're managing the account, you're communicating, all of that stuff. So I think it is really important for young designers to understand that, because then you really are viewing the graphic design as a service, that's to me, that is what it is.
Yeah.
Not always a service, but the reality is that when you're, freelancing or working a job, it's a service. You've got clients, you've got to, do some of that account management. So build those skills. Communication is huge as well. Again, learning how to connect your ideas with what the client wants and needs is a very big, like, puzzle to solve, especially early on. I think that there's, often when you're in design school, it's a little bit of a bubble. You're kind of, everything is theoretical, but when you're working with a client, it's messy, right? Like, we've all
So
got clients
messy.
who, maybe have expectations that are out the door. A lot of it is also educating the client on the value of what you're doing. A lot of it is also trust building. I think that's also the key
Mhm.
thing. If you can manage to, build that trust with your client, then selling your design work is so much easier. So
Yes, agree.
yeah, I very much agree that taking on freelance jobs here and there, as much as you can when you're younger, take those.
Yes, I agree. I did like tons of wedding invitations, when your friends
Oh
all
yeah.
start getting married, like all of that. I've watched your friends go and be bridezilla for a few minutes and then you can like deal with that. But yeah, the whole end-to-end process, understanding just a little bit about doing the paperwork and kind of managing your own affairs. Like I think there's
Hmm.
something really empowering about learning how to manage your own affairs. So, like, if you did lose your job or something happened, you have those skills to kind of take on a little bit of work.
Oh yeah, it's almost like a bit of a safety net. If you can do freelance work and you can manage it, um, it's hugely helpful in times when you just need a little bit of extra money. Maybe, you've got a bit of job insecurity.
Yeah.
I think knowing that at the end of the day, I can always fall back on freelance in some capacity is a huge relief.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it is a safety net and it's very empowering. And in a way, I hear designers say you don't want to do it because it's so much work, it's tiring, it's exhausting. I get that. But I would say
Mhm.
like do one or two projects a year and go through the life cycle of it.
Oh
And
yeah,
then you are setting yourself up for success and being able to kind of take responsibility for your career and not be completely reliant on your job, which, and you're in that
yeah.
amazing position where you have a job you really enjoy. However, should something happen, you have another avenue.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, if you don't want to freelance full time, once you build those skills early on and you take on, the wedding
Yeah.
invitations, the
Yeah.
little bits and pieces here and there, you understand that process and how to deliver. The beauty is that even if you don't want to freelance full time, you get to be choosy in your spare time. And that's one thing that I feel like younger designers I talk to aren't being choosy enough. If you're not relying on freelance, if you've got a full-time job doing whatever it is,
Hmm.
go after the clients that you think would be super cool. Do the projects that are experimental. Like that's your opportunity to sort of add to your portfolio if your day job isn't really doing it for you necessarily.
Okay, well, you needed to give me that advice back in the day because I took on anything and everything, and I would always feel this is like some, wherever this came from, but responsible for people being happy. And I felt that if I didn't do their
Mm-hmm.
freelance job,
Oh
and
yeah.
and if it was a, let's say it was invitations that I knew was just going to be like not a good experience, and I felt like I still had to do it. And I was like, the people pleaser in me was like, yes, I'll do this. So I feel like I was not discerning. And
Yeah.
it was a little bit of that desperation. Well, I want to make as much money as I can because I'm in my 20s and my day job pays like garbage.
Yeah.
So there was the panic, there's like the stress about it, there's the people pleasing. Like it was kind of a recipe for disaster. And I did end up doing too much freelance work and definitely was burnt out, like yeah, in my
Mhm.
younger years.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did that too. I think it's
Okay.
it is really
Not
tough
just
when
me.
you're starting out for sure. Yeah, yeah. I think this is very easy for all the reasons that you stated, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to make some extra cash. You just want
Yeah.
to get some experience. And I think that's the lesson that I learned is that actually that's not necessarily the way to do it. Learning how to say no. Like I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I want to please everybody. I want to say yes. I want everyone else to be successful around me to my own detriment sometimes. And learning that the hard way, getting so burnt out that I just couldn't do anything anymore. That was the hard lesson of learning how to say no was also a great aspect of freelance. It is also great to be able to fire a client when you need to. I mean, even early on, I did that a couple times where I was, being asked to do something that was unethical.
Yeah.
And just getting that practice and sort of learning how to stick up for yourself is a big aspect of that.
Yeah, I have absolutely kind of fired clients or walked away and said, I'm not going to continue working with you because, yeah, I was uncomfortable with
Yeah.
some of how they were doing things because I knew they were taking assets from other designers that they weren't like crediting. Just there was things going
Yeah.
on. I also now will not work with clients who are bad communicators.
Yeah.
So I worked with someone a couple times on a project on different projects. I have never worked with someone who was less competent or able to communicate what they wanted via
Oh, wow.
email, via text, via however that they were doing it on all these platforms, and I couldn't rein them in. And
Wow.
the
Yeah.
process was so painful. I had no idea what they wanted. That it was the stress it was causing me was it was like it
Not
was just
worth it.
ridiculous. And this is someone who runs like multi-million dollar businesses, right? So
Wow.
you would
Yeah.
think that could be a great client to kind of keep working with, but I had to say no because the process was so painful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's no end of people who are bad communicators, people who I had one client ask they wanted to start like a clothing company, like t-shirts for kids, and they wanted me to just take whatever off of Google image search and turn it into a graphic for them. I was
Oh
like,
yeah,
I'm
that's
not
nice.
doing that. And they're like, well, they couldn't understand. And I was like, this isn't going to work. Gotta go.
They just want to
Yeah.
do like a print on demand company or something like that.
Yeah. And even though I tried to walk them through, like, you can't just take any image you find on the internet and put it on a t-shirt and sell it. They could not wrap their head around why that wasn't okay. I had another client asked to asked me to create a logo that was in the style of like Coast Salish form line.
Mhm.
So like there's popular indigenous art style here. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Again, they couldn't understand what the issue was. And I was like,
No,
okay, I don't think this is going to work.
no,
Yeah.
no. And so the learning to say no, and it is scary the first time you kind of say no to a client or a freelance
Oh yeah.
project, especially when you're younger. Like you feel sick. Like I remember feeling like so uncomfortable, like sick, guilty. Like, am I stupid for not taking this project and this money? I should be doing this,
Hmm.
the should that we all talk about. But then over time, it gets to be really like you get empowered by it. You're like, I'm
Yeah.
choosing me in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then it just gives you that much more confidence in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's like your business in your freelance world. And I don't even like using the word freelance because it is a business. Even if you're just doing a couple projects a year, you're running a business. And so you have to think like a business owner and try and be discerning. And I know it's hard in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, stick up for yourself. You just gotta, and it's hard when money is an issue, but as much as you can, when you can, just say no and just practice doing that, because if you can learn those skills early on, it will help so much more later in your career when you're in a position where it's like saying no becomes more and more important.
Because often more is asked from you as you go through your career.
Yeah. And the more senior you get, the more you really need to be able to be discerning, like, is this actually what I should be working on? Is this actually
Yeah.
how I should spend my energy? Even at the day job, that's half of my job is just, incoming requests. And I'm like, is this really what we should do right now? Let's talk about it.
Yes. And I love that you bring that to light. So, what would you say you're most proud of in your career?
Oh, good question. Um, I would say that one of the proudest moments was at Science World, leading the team to win a design award for the brand refresh that we did. It was
Mm.
an 18-month project. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So I was pretty proud that that work was recognized. And then I would say launching Otto and the success that it's seen so far has been really, really energizing. And I think we're all pretty proud of it.
Yes. And you should be proud of it. And the reason why I kind of like to ask this question sometimes is because we don't take time out to be proud of our accomplishments. I think designers are also really good at that, or creatives like sweeping
Oh,
accomplishments
yeah.
under the rug. There's some that are like out there on like wanting, yeah, just talking about everything all the awards they've won. But I would say that's not the majority of people. And people who are doing these amazing things in the career, they just like dismiss it. So I really like knowing what people are actually proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of creatives tend to be much more shy about sharing what they've done and their accomplishments. We all know putting together a portfolio is like the worst. It's such a slog to do, and it's everyone agonizes over it. And I think part of it is because we're so self-critical,
Yeah.
and we're critical of our own work and what we're doing. And I think if we flip it on its head a little bit more and be like, actually, toot your own horn a little bit, there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that.
Well,
Yeah.
who's going to do it for you if you're not doing it for yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of artists love having, like more in the traditional art world, they have an agent, right? And they have a rep and they have someone going out there championing. I can't say that word, championing. You know the word I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There's certain words I can't say. Anyway, there are people out there cheerleading them on. And graphic designers don't really have that. We don't have access to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that would be I would love that job, to be like
Oh,
an agent
let's
for graphic
create a job.
designers and be like, you need to pay them more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not talking about those recruiters that try and get you
Oh,
jobs. I'm talking, yeah, like
yeah.
that don't actually get you jobs. But um, so the other thing I'm noticing in your career is like you were never really afraid to pivot. And I know that word's a little bit overused right now, but um you embrace the change.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just being able to be flexible and agile. It's funny. I have this like little metaphor with my friends whenever things are getting a little bit tough. Those like wavy tube guys at car dealerships.
The Kardashian, yes, and they don't fall down, but they wave
Okay,
around.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then they wave around. That's sort of like my mental image is like, okay, if things are like really getting hairy and there's not anything I can do about it, then I just try to be the wavy guy and try to like have as much fun as possible and go with the flow as much as I can, and not take things too seriously as much as possible as well. So I think that has served me super well is, being open at all times to whatever opportunities might be coming my way, to the conversations that are happening, and using my gut to guide me through those decisions.
So, what would you say to the person who is sitting there gripping to every step of their career and being like, it has to be this way. I have to go here. I have to go here. I want to stay in this industry. Like, the ones who have a tight fist around how things have to transpire. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say I would ask them, by having that tight grip on this vision of what you think your career is going to be, what are you saying no to? What opportunities are out there that could be possible? And the other thing I would say is, people have the saying, don't meet your heroes. Things do not always pan out in the way that you think that they will. Pretty much, if there's one truism of the world, that's pretty much always true. So your vision of how your career will look, even if you follow the exact steps and you get there, it's not going to look the exact way that you think it will.
Yeah.
So just be open.
Yes. Okay. So I'd love that part about you're going to say no to things that you haven't even thought about if you're so fixated on where you have to go. So there's all these opportunities. It's like you're focused on the one door and there's a million doors that you could be going through. So it's so sad to me to like cut all that out because you just don't know. And yeah, so I love that. And I love the visual of the car punchy bag man or whatever that thing is. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And kind of being the flexible and just checking in with the gut.
Yeah. And I would say, when you're a little kid and you're thinking of like, oh, what do I want to be when I grow up? You don't know like the wide range of things that you could possibly do. You don't even know what they are. And that stays the same the older you get. Like there's jobs out there and there's opportunities that you could never imagine. And if you're so fixated on one thing, you're not going to see those opportunities like when they're right in your face. So keep an open mind.
You have no idea what jobs exist. Like I've told this story before that when I was at a creative agency and they were telling me about this job at Harlequin Romance Books, which was at the time called a creative art editor. Well, that was the weirdest job title ever. Yeah, you don't go to school and they tell you about a job called creative art editor, but it was basically to be an art director for romance novel books. And I didn't know this job really existed. Obviously, these books existed and somehow the art got on the cover. I had no idea that job existed. So had I not been in that meeting, she had told me about the job and instantly I knew. I was like, this is a job for me. Like I want this job. And I busted it in the interviews really to get it. But how could I have gone through my career and being like, you know what, I want to go. I didn't even think of publishing. It wasn't even so much on my radar. So you have to just see what's going to unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know what a designer was until I basically got into art school. It's like, I think this is what I want to do. Sure. Let's give it a shot. So yeah.
Because you didn't have anyone in your family who was working in the like design world or anything like that?
No, not at all. So yeah, I think just keep your eyes open to the things and as they shape around you, right? Everything's always changing. Careers are changing. The workplace is changing. So if you don't have your eyes open, and continually check in with yourself, you're going to miss out on what could actually be the best thing that you never knew you needed.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Okay. I love to ask this question. So at the end of my interview, so Jen, in the spirit of helping people ditch the struggle, what do you feel is most important to commit to?
I would say, as we've been talking about, I would say commit to being flexible, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive. But I would say if you can commit to the idea that things are always changing and you can change with them and that's okay, I think that in the end serves people way better than being so focused on just one thing and thinking that you can control the outcome. You can't control the outcome.
I don't know how my control freaks are taking this information in that are listening.
Yeah, I got news for you, but yeah.
It's so true. It's like you're thoughtful and discerning, which is what I'm hearing every time we have conversations, thoughtful and discerning, but the flexibility is definitely a thread that I would say is throughout your career and how you've made your decisions and has served you really, really well.
Yeah, agility is key and it's a great skill to practice.
Oh, I love that. So we need to be flexible, stop clenching our fists and trying not to operate from the panic room and trusting that things are going to work out.
Yeah, exactly. Trust yourself.
That. Yes, trust yourself. Well, thank you, Jen. I really appreciate that. And I know our listeners are absolutely going to resonate with everything you talked about today.
Oh, amazing. It was super fun to chat.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.